Hello, and welcome to a quick little chat about the Wildlife and Fisheries Conservation Diploma, WFC as we call it, here at Lakeland College in Vermilion. First things first, who is this talking head in the upper right corner? Uh, well, that's me. My name is Brendan Ganton, and I say here I rejoined Lakeland several years ago now as an instructor. I rejoined because I was a graduate from this program. At that time, way back in 2002, they called it the Natural Resources Technology NRT program. Now they've changed that name to WFC, Wildlife and Fisheries Conservation. In the meantime, I have spent over 16 years working in fisheries, primarily as a fisheries biologist here in Alberta. I've worked for government agencies. I've worked for environmental consulting firms. I have worked for non-government organizations, principally Alberta Conservation Association, and now teaching here at Lakeland College. I am primarily teaching in their fisheries and aquatic biology courses. So, fish and aquatic bugs and lakes and river water quality. I am also the WFC program head. So, it's great that I am here and I can give you this chat because if you have any questions or follow up, I'm the one that you want to get a hold of. So I put my email there, brendan.ganton@lakelandcollege.ca, and I'll throw it on the very last slide as well. So if you have any questions, you can get me an email and I can get you your answers or put you in touch with the right person to do that. So what is the WFC diploma program? And why would I want to take that one? If you like fish and wildlife and are interested in working at all or any way with them, yeah, this might be the diploma for you. We focus primarily on those things, the fish and wildlife species of our prairie provinces, with a focus on Alberta, because that's where we're sitting and what's right around us. So yeah, our identification in biology is the first key that we look to unlock for or give our students so they can unlock their careers. Identification in biology. Then ecology, those habitats that sustain those species. And we also learn a little bit about management, regulations, and legislation that protect those species. For instance, with fisheries, how many fish are we allowed to keep, and how are those decisions made? Just some of the questions and discussions we would have with our students in our program. Um, those last two bullets really key to this program are field skills. We give our students a lot of hands-on field skills and certifications. This is really about getting our grads ready to compete for jobs that first summer or when they're done their diploma and looking for their first job. These are going to be real key employable field skills and certifications. And lastly, we'll feature through this presentation some very unique experiences that we can give our grads here at Lakeland that you may not find at a traditional university, a larger university, or even some of the other schools and programs that we would that might even offer something similar. Some unique experiences that are things that our students get to do that other programs just may not. A couple details before we get into the nitty gritty of, hey, what kind of wildlife are we looking at, or what kind of fish are we looking at? I want to talk very briefly outside of even just the WFC diploma, some of the flexibility and some of the advantages of just coming to Lakeland and environmental sciences at Lakeland have. This first one, your year one of your WFC diploma and all of your the other three environmental sciences diplomas are common. You take common courses. This allows you as a first year student, if you know, hey, I'm a wildlife person, I want to be a wildlife biologist, that's great. And is great to know before you start. Or I want to be an officer, or I want to be a fisheries biologist, the rare kid or a couple of kids who want to be a fish biologist and know it right from day one. Um, that's great. And you can go through and finish your WFC diploma. Awesome. But if you aren't 100% sure, we give you some flexibility by offering this common year that allows you to, after your first year, call an audible and say, you know what, I am actually really interested in restoration. Maybe will fit better as a care diploma student, or I'm way more into reclamation. and I want, oil and gas. Maybe you're an ECR student in that case, or maybe you just want to pick and choose and build your own career, your own school experience, and you might belong in our Applied Environmental Sciences diploma, a little bit more general, which allows you to pick some courses. Our year one being common allows students to make that switch after their first year. Year two, those of you who know, hey, I'm a WFC student for sure. Year two, that's where we get into the nitty gritty. Dig deeper into your major. Our wildlife biology and techniques course, our fisheries biology and techniques course, our birds course. We call it ornithology, but we didn't want to scare anyone off. Our birds course, also our aquatic organisms, or what I call bugs there. Learn a little bit about some of the bugs that live in the water around you. Then we also have some additional course on understanding watersheds and also environmental regulations. Those rules and regulations that are meant to protect the wildlife around us. And lastly, we have a couple courses where our focus really is getting some of those unique experiences, the field skills and certifications that are going to make you employable right when you're finished your diploma. A little bit more about flexibility and educational paths. If you finish WFC and you go out and you can start working as an environmental technician right off the hop, great. But maybe you want to have a little bit more of a broad experience, a little bit more experience outside of even just WFC. So 2 years at Lakeland, that's right. We're going to give you your WFC major diploma. But if you add on one more year at Lakeland, I sound like an infomercial. That's kind of a little bit what it is. But wait, there's more. If you add 1 year at Lakeland, you can come away with 2 diplomas. So you have your core courses already. You can add that additional year of specialization and get a second diploma, whether it's the care diploma, like I said, that restoration, ECR, our reclamation side, or AES, our applied environmental sciences. You can have 2 diplomas and walk away. Some of these, depending on as you build this concept, better concept once you're a student of exactly what you envision yourself doing, some of our diplomas pair up really, really well and will make you a real specialized, very employable person for the career path that you want to take. We also offer an applied degree. So if you take additional year, so you have your diploma, take another year plus a practicum, and you can come away with an applied environmental degree from Lakeland. Lastly, always great to have options to ladder up and build on top of your diploma. We offer transfer programs. You can take the credits that you gained here, doing a lot of fun, exciting, valuable to your job, practical hands-on skills, and you can take that away to a more traditional university, U of A, UNBC, UPEI, Mount Royal, but bring along with you all of those great experiences you had. And I know for a fact you'll be sitting in classes with university with people who've only talked about these things theoretically, and you'll be coming in with this really robust hands-on, you're learning about those fish. I've netted them, I've electrofished, I've had them in my hand, I've ID'd them already, just heads and shoulders above sometimes that traditional, what I'd say is a more traditional just a only university route. There's a lot of advantage to our students coming in with their hands-on skills. So after that, you'll have a diploma and a degree. Wildlife biology and techniques. Let's talk a little. Well, I'll talk first about some of our wildlife courses and aspects, and then we'll switch into fisheries. We start. We usually I'd like to start these presentations with a little bit of a game. So, which species of mammal, sitting in Vermilion where we are here, you might be tempted to say gopher or ground squirrel. But look at that background. It's certainly not Vermilion, the Vermilion I know, where Lakeland College is sitting. No, this is taken by some students during a trip out to do some surveys in the foothills and look at things like bighorn sheep and some of these little guys. This is a hoary marmot. Looks like a nice basin behind there, a ski basin. Hoary marmot is that one. Our wildlife students will also look and be trained up as biologists that can identify by sight and by sound our amphibians and reptiles here in Alberta. This is an amphibian. What is it? If you're from Eastern Canada, you may have seen a lot more of these than people, say, in Alberta may have, because it is a threatened species here in Alberta. That's the northern leopard frog. So you may not have seen or come across them quite as much if you grew up here in Alberta, especially in relatively dry prairies. Field skills, key field skill when it comes to our wildlife students, one that's really important to build on, because the use of trail cameras has expanded so much in the last few years. They're very affordable and they're very effective, and they can sit out where the animals live and record 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's a lot of time for a technician to spend out there. And it might be the first and last job you ever have if you need to spend all year out in the bush. Sounds like a dream to some of us. But in this case, the use of trail cameras to monitor things like linear developments, pipeline crossings, power lines, or just collect information about areas has drastically grown as they become more affordable and more widely used. So it's a really key skill that our students walk away with, running trail cameras. We've run them in the past in the provincial park here, also on properties like our Lakeland College farm. And they're great for picking up, and important for our students to learn how to ID and deploy and then ID the animals that they capture pictures of. So for instance, monitoring mammals here. From one of our student trail cams. Which species is that? If you haven't been in our course, maybe you don't know. If you're a hunter, maybe you do, but you might have a good guess either way. This one's a pretty recognizable species. That's right, it is an elk. Not quite as big as the new Pope and Young world record that was taken just west of Vermilion here, kind of north of Innisfree, toward Vegreville area, the O'Shea Pope and Young elk. But he's not too tiny either. That's a nice looking elk. So trail cameras representing kind of a newer approach to wildlife and expanding, being used more often. Here's another field skill, radio telemetry, that our students during their labs wildlife students will have access to. And this is kind of the tried and true method for tracking wildlife. Everything from an elk, like you saw there, grizzly bear, birds, fish, surgically implanted in fish even, radio telemetry. And it's just a technique that allows you to relocate animals in their habitats. So you can learn something about migration. You can learn something about movement of those animals. So radio telemetry, and these guys are out at the provincial park. It's a great resource that we have really just next door around the corner from us. And they're out there trying to locate a collar that's been hidden in the park. So radio telemetry. Back to a newer approach, or hey, the digital revolution, automatic recording units, or ARUs. This is another tool or technique that we'll train our students up on, and they are widely used for recording animal sounds. Automatic recording units. So we have some clip art there. Yeah, bats. They're effective for monitoring bats. Also used for monitoring birds by their calls. And then, just like our leopard frog on that earlier slide, yeah, croaks and trills of our amphibians. It's great to be able to put out a recording unit that can spend all night. They don't get eaten by mosquitoes because they're automatic recording units, but they sit out there and record all of the calls and sounds of the animals in the area, which you then can use software or your own ears to listen to and complete a survey from the relative comfort back at your hotel room or your office, depending on what your working setup is. Another classic technique, any biologist who's done any sort of work or is worth their salt here in Alberta has put a number of hours down the barrel of a spotting scope. So yeah, definitely a key skill for our students and for them to be familiar with the tool, the setup, and also how to monitor or how to find a comfortable stump. Field skills, wildlife behavioral sampling. So here we have a student that's out monitoring in the foothills, looking at perhaps bighorn sheep or that hoary marmot that we took a picture of earlier. Definitely also a key for bird surveys, bird sweeps and point counts, shorebirds, also our waterfowl. Binoculars and spotting scopes, definitely key tools for our wildlife technicians and biologists. Another skill that our students will build or have exposure to, wildlife tracks, identifying animals by their tracks. Really key technique for doing things, like wildlife sweeps at any sort of development or a linear feature on the landscape. And here, just for example, comparison of black bear and grizzly bear tracks. It might be really important for you sometimes as a technician, depending on where you're working, to be able to differentiate between whose track, what tracks are those outside of my tent? Is that a black bear or a grizzly bear track? So just take a quick look at those two, especially the curvature of the front foot toes. Our grizzly bear closer together and less curved. Our black bear toes more separated and more curved. And we'll play a quick game again. So here's a track that was found, and highlighting it for you. Whose track is that? Who does that look more like? Yeah, I think I might have given you too much of a hint. Whose track is this? Yeah, it's our friendly black bear. He might just be hanging out at the picnic table in the Vermilion Provincial Park. We do have one now every now and then in the fall. How about the fish side of things? That other major focus. So we have our wildlife, our birds, amphibians, reptiles, mammals. What about the fish side of things and aquatic sciences? We'll just kick it right off with a game. What species is this? Fish ID being one of the key skills our students will build. If you fished before in the East Slopes, you might be familiar with this guy, but it is a brown trout. And I did post a video looking at salmonid ID. So if you had a chance to watch that one, or maybe you can pause before the next few slides and go take a look at it. Just some really easy tools for being able to differentiate our different salmonid or trout and char species here in Alberta. So I gave it away there at the bottom. Black spots with pale halos. If it has those two things, it's going to be a brown trout in Alberta. What about these two species? Are these the same fish species? First of all, I can hear everyone from eastern Alberta through Saskatchewan all saying, yeah, those are pickerel. I know those ones. Everybody a little bit further east, Manitoba, Ontario, they're saying, yeah, those are walleye. And if you're from Western Alberta into BC, you're kind of 50-50. You might have learned pickerel, you might have learned walleye. Biologists, we call them walleye. At least one of these species, walleye, because no, these fish aren't actually the same species. So these two, how would we tell them apart? A WFC student, grad would be able to tell you, yeah, we look at some key distinguishing features. And for these two fish, definitely the dorsal fin is a giveaway. Our sauger, which is the top left one, will have those spots on its dorsal fin, whereas the walleye will not have those spots. It will instead have a black wedge. You can kind of see just below the tip of the arrow there, a black wedge at the back end of the dorsal fin, as well as that white spot on the lower lobe of its tail. So where that other arrow is pointed. That's how you can tell walleye apart from sauger here in Alberta. What about this fish? If you've been to many ponds in Saskatchewan or Alberta, you've probably seen a fish that looks kind of like this one. What kind of fish? It is a rainbow trout. Okay. Is this species of fish native to Alberta, Saskatchewan? Another question our students discussion we'd have. I can tell you it's not native to Saskatchewan, but we do have the Athabasca rainbow trout here in Alberta, a native population. Although the vast majority of rainbow trout in both those provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, are introduced species, Alberta does have an endangered now species of native rainbow trout, the Athabasca rainbow trout. What about this one? He is indeed your provincial fish of Alberta. He has a really big bullish head. He is a bull trout. Okay, that's the official provincial fish of Alberta. Also threatened due to overfishing, habitat loss, and competition from introduced species. One of those introduced species is right here. And the question I put here is, how would you tell them apart? And some of you, if you've been fishing in Alberta or ever looked at regulations or fished in the East Slopes, you might remember that tagline, no black, put it back. No black, put it back. That's referring to our bull trout. And more specifically, both to their sides and also their dorsal fin. So if you look at the sides of that fish and its dorsal fin, the bull trout, there's no black markings or spots. Whereas our brook trout, that's a brook trout on the lower left, he does have black markings on his dorsal fin. Okay, so no black, put it back. That's a bull trout. Lower left, black vermiculations on the dorsal fin, brook trout. Feel free, if you were confused by that, to go check out my fish ID quick lesson, kind of snapshot that I gave you. Fisheries habitat and management. So a little bit beyond just the species ID. Yeah, what kind of lake management, river water quality, what impacts do we see on the landscape? So we see here some students participating in some water quality labs with water samples pulled from local water bodies. And then we can have some conversations around things like cultural eutrophication, a fancy way of saying fertilizer or nutrients getting into our lakes. That nutrient input causes some impacts, and sometimes we see negative impacts like summer kill events. That picture on the right of all those dead fish washed up. Sometimes that's what we see and have questions about as the public. Why are all these dead? What are all these dead fish from? And so grads from our WFC program will be able to have some discussions with the public about things like enrichment of our lakes and summer kill phenomena. Or in the lower right, a hanging culvert and the impact that some of our industrial activities and road building can have, especially in higher gradient in our East Slopes area. That hanging culvert's going to be it's going to kind of fraction the habitat and break habitat for fish that are trying to move up and down rivers and creeks. Another field skill, aquatic organism collection and ID. So our bugs that live in the water, our students will be well versed in collecting and identifying aquatic organisms. And they'll also be able to say something about what certain organisms mean about the quality of the environment in those areas based on the bugs that they find. Another field skill that they get exposure to, gill netting. So this is a great way to get fish into your hand. Widely used technique by government agencies here in Alberta. Gill netting, principally for assessment of lakes for walleye and pike. So fall index netting is used, and that's the tools that we train our students up on here at Lakeland. We get to do this every fall during our field week, kind of an intensive week of let's get outside, let's catch some fish, let's look at some wildlife. Field week before the water gets cold and hard each fall. So our students do get to get fish in hand and some experience with identifying, setting, and retrieving nets. Beach seining, another approach that we use for sampling shallow areas and primarily small-bodied fish. But our students will get to do a net haul and pull up some small fish and then process them and identify them. That group of students in the middle on the right, going through and measuring, weighing all of the fish. So here's a little zoom in on what that small fish identification and sampling might look like. We have some on the right-hand side, some fish that were electrofish, some burbot on the left, some lake chub on the right, and the students doing all the recording after weighing and measuring them. The lower left is a good example of, unfortunately, we did have one burbot that died when we were electrofishing. It actually got stunned, and I think someone stepped on it, unfortunately. But part of our required reporting in an instance like that will be the sex of the fish. So we were just doing a quick look and explanation of what the different gonads look like in male fish versus female fish. Okay, so there we have a young female burbot that we're looking at. Interestingly, also to point out that burbot in the center, the lower center, also had some ectoparasites, some leeches feeding on the outside of it, so eating the mucus and a little bit of blood meal from its pectoral fins. Another field skill that our students go away with, a really neat opportunity. We have a pool here on campus, so we can do water safety class and test out some of the safety equipment that they might be using during the fall or during the winter as fisheries technicians or aquatic technicians, going out and doing surveys on frozen rivers or lakes. Really neat opportunity for students to get out and kind of push their comfort zone a little bit and get comfortable using PPE, PFDs, and things for holding temperature and warmth in if you happen to fall into cold water, but in the relative comfort and safety of our pool here. I talked about reporting the sex of that burbot that we sampled. And that is a real key skill that our students go away with that they're going to miss potentially other places. If they're employed as a wildlife technician or fisheries technician, it's going to be very key for them to be familiar with protocols and regulations and reporting and data management for both our wildlife and our fish. And especially this key on the bottom, the FWMIS, the Fish and Wildlife Management Information System. Definitely Environment and Parks, Alberta Environment and Parks controls and gives us permission to do any sort of survey that we would on wildlife and fish. But part of the requirement of that is reporting and uploading all of that data we collect into their publicly managed, their government managed database. So you need to know how to enter your data properly into a load form and submit it properly. So that's going to be a great experience that our students walk away with. And a question that will come on any interview if they're doing any sort of data collection. Their employer will ask, are you familiar with FWMIS and data load forms and how to submit that data? And our students can answer yes. We have experience, we've seen the system, and we've entered our own load forms. So they'll go away with that, a real advantage to be able to have that conversation when you're competing for your first few jobs. Some unique experiences. So we have some unique experiences here, and then we'll end off with certifications. But there are some, being here in Lakeland, in Vermilion, with the support of the community we have around us, there are some very unique experiences that our students have been able to participate in the past. In fact, I know I'm recording this on a Thursday in the fall semester, and we had some students go out just today, and I didn't get to tag along, but they went out to do some of this problem wildlife management. Just like this group of students is here, they got to participate in removal of a beaver dam with some explosives. That would be an extreme example of problem wildlife management, but they'll also learn about some of the practical techniques of less invasive things like mechanical removal of a beaver dam or putting in a pond leveler or a beaver deceiver, something that will just allow that water to still flow while not being quite as an explosive experience for our wildlife. Another one, Wainwright Chronic Wasting Disease Check Station. In the past, just not this last couple of years with COVID, we have access to the base has been very restricted, but generally speaking, we've been in touch with returning to this as things possibly get back to a little bit more normal. But our students have been able to participate in the chronic wasting disease check stations. So checking hunters' harvests and taking heads for submitting and testing. So here's a group of students doing just that. I would probably suggest a different color of pants next time for the young lady who's collecting the deer heads, but there's a good learning opportunity. Another unique experience that we've had the pleasure of being able to participate in is Raptor Rehab and going to, and I put the logo there in the bottom right, the Alberta Society for Injured Birds of Prey. You can find them on Facebook. They are a registered charity, and they've been really good to us as a program. So I'd encourage you guys to go and check them out and think about supporting them. We have a picture there in the top right of a great gray owl that was at the rehab center during a past Lakeland student visit. And one of our students took some great photos that day. And right in front, we have a young peregrine falcon with one of our students when they were out and talking about falconry and hunting using birds of prey. Another one on the fish side, visit to a hatchery. So the Cold Lake Hatchery has been really great for having our students out annually to do a tour of their facility. They're also a great employer of our students when they graduate as fisheries technicians. Unfortunately, again, with COVID, we haven't been able to go last year, but luckily, another program grad, Lakeland College program grad, is actually in charge of running the Sam Livingston Hatchery now in Calgary. So he was actually able to give us a virtual tour of Sam Livingston Hatchery, which is some place that our grads haven't been able to go in person or virtually in the past. So that was an absolutely excellent opportunity. And hopefully we get to be back in person at Cold Lake in future years. Here's another one, a wildlife habitat enhancement project. In the past, we participated with Ducks Unlimited, um, also Delta waterfowl, and having these structures on the Lakeland College farm itself. This is actually a student restuffing, repairing, and cleaning out a nesting tunnel, a duck nesting tunnel. And so our waterfowl will nest inside of these tunnels, and it gives them a nice safe spot to lay their eggs and raise their young. A little bit less pressure from our crows and a little bit less pressure from our coyotes and things like that, skunks that would get into and raid a nest. So that's a great, unique experience our students can have being out here at Lakeland. Another one, wilderness survival skills. And this is both a unique experience and also a field skill. Yeah, because working as a wildlife technician or fisheries technician, plans don't always go the way you'd like. Equipment doesn't always work, especially in the cold. And so you might be facing the prospect of having to shelter in place, maybe spend a night before you have equipment that can be brought to you or get extracted from the work location that you're at. Definitely something that I've been close to, luckily, never personally had to experience, but been close to in a couple of my different positions where we've had staff stranded in different locations. So being able to have some confidence and know some basic wilderness survival skills, really key and a great experience for our students to build some abilities in that arena. Certifications, just at the tail end here, we'll go through a handful of certifications, some real key employable skills that our WFC students walk away with. So first here being chainsaw, great conversation to have with a potential employer. What experience do you have with operating chainsaws? Just a completely applicable skill regardless of what you're going to end up doing. Wildlife technician, fisheries technician, all of the above. Chainsaw skills. So we get chainsaws into the hands of our students and we teach them how to use them safely and correctly. So maintenance and also a safe operation, both really valuable from an employer perspective. Can you take care of my saw, or will you put straight gas in it? Will you be able to operate safely, maintain a sharp blade, things like that? So these are all skills that we give our students. When you're out there, we already looked at the bear prints and we talked about, oh, whose print is that, a grizzly or a black? Beyond that, yeah, bear safety. When we're out as technicians, this is going to be a key skill that we have. Some employers that I've worked with in the past, here, watch this DVD. And after watching that DVD, you're assumed to be good to go encounter bears out in the Alberta wilderness. Not so much here. We give them a much more inclusive and holistic approach. Give them some practice using tools like bear spray, which leads us to that question. If you've never sprayed it before, how effective, what's the effective range of bear spray? And you might find it's closer than you think, or closer than you might be comfortable with a grizzly bear or black bear being to you. Yeah, about a maximum of about 4 meters. The stream style, 3 to 4. The cone and the mist, one that we're mostly familiar with now, 2 to 4 meter range. So maybe a little bit closer than you might be comfortable with. But important for you to know that it's not something that you can spray across an open clearing and expect to be effective. It's really a close deterrent. Wilderness first aid, just like having to stay overnight in a lean-to, it's important for our students to at least consider or be aware of the fact that unlike our standard first aid, which in the age of cell phones has really defaulted and become call 911 and control the scene and the situation until help arrives. The most important thing being, yeah, call 911 and get an ambulance here, because we know that we have response times of 5 to 10 minutes in a lot of places. Not so much when we're remote technicians, wildlife technicians, or fisheries technicians. So it's important for our students to understand there's maybe some additional scenarios, some additional skills that you might need to work on if you need to stabilize a patient for a longer period of time, or potentially transport them from the point where an incident has happened to a helicopter pad or to a road, or have to prepare a landing site for a helicopter to get in. Just some really good scenarios and to take our students through to think beyond just the call 911, they're going to be here in 5 minutes, because that's not always the case for us out there. Firearms safety course. If you don't have anything, yeah, you can take your basic firearms safety course. and look at getting your PAL so you can possess a firearm legally here in Canada. Great tool for our students if you're looking at going into any sort of real resource work, wildlife technician, sometimes carrying them for safety, working up north, being accompanied, closely watched by even polar bears when you're working up really far north, or if you're looking to go into enforcement or things like that. So having to carry firearms, really great tool and great for us to be able to offer that to our students should they want it. If you already have it, our instructors here have also been able to train up folks who already have their basic with a restricted firearm safety course. So if you're interested in going a little bit further, you can look into that too while you're here. And this picture is just from our students out shooting some skeet at the range here in Vermilion. OHV certification. So seeing there, we've got a sled, snowmobile, and also quad. So our students get some experience, introductory training and safety course in operation of OHVs. This is a fantastic skill, especially for those who didn't grow up, and maybe even more important for those who did grow up, because we teach you on how to operate these things more safely from an employer perspective, because that's where that conversation is going to be really valuable. Sitting in that interview, tell me about what experience you have on operating a quad or a side-by-side, an OHV, off-highway vehicle. And they can say, yeah, no, I've had this training, I've had this experience in a professional setting. Great conversation and an easy answer on a interview that's going to give you a leg up on the competition. Electrofishing. I talked about our burbot that we accidentally stepped on, but our electrofishing, yeah, it is a widely used technique. So we'll train up our grads in the WorkSafe BC, which is kind of the Western Canada standard for safe electrofishing operations. So they'll all come out with a certificate as an electrofishing crew member, making them instantly more employable when it comes to a summer job. Oh, you're already trained up, you have the training in that, and it's the WorkSafe BC applicable one. Great, that's fantastic. A training that we don't have to provide for you because you already have it in your back pocket. You got your ticket. So there, just a couple pictures of what electrofishing is, just capturing and stunning fish within an electrical current in the water. So obviously, something that we have to do, make sure we're being safe while doing. Pleasure craft operator card and practical experience. So I know a lot of us have our pleasure craft operator card, or some students even do coming into the course, but it might be a quick 15-minute online test that we took, or a test that we wrote at the Boat and Sportsman show behind a curtain, and we didn't really learn anything. We just were able to pass a test and get our card. We go a little bit further. Yeah, our students get signed up and can get their pleasure craft operator card. But then we also do some practical experience. So in conjunction with our field week, we get to go out and actually talk about operating, in this case, a 4-stroke tiller arm motor, and drive around a little bit and challenge, do some turns, and also practice some techniques like approaching a buoy and retrieving it without running over the net that it's attached to. So these are all really great skills for our fisheries technicians and environmental technicians to have. That is it for our little very quick overview of some of the awesome things we can offer through the Wildlife and Fisheries Conservation Diploma, WFC. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope that you'll consider our program, and that I'll see you in the fall. I threw my email there in the bottom corner again, brendan.ganton@lakelandcollege.ca. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.